everyone who came. We have here guests from USFA, we have here guests from general audience, right? And interested in Ukraine, we have academics here from USID. We have Prism, right, as well, President from Prism as well, traveling, but who isn't speaking. Hopefully we'll have more guests. So thank you so much for joining us today. So we'll talk today about a very interesting topic. I was actually interested in the topic for quite some time because there was some news coming, I think in December last year, that Ukraine plans to close some universities because of lack of enrollments. And at the same time, you know, yes, there is a shortage of students in Ukraine, universities in Ukraine try to adapt to the situation. Some of them moved online, some of them, you know, just trying to limit the operations and limit their resources. On the other hand, think tanks and media centers, they're growing in a sense of a demand probably, right, for the expertise in Europe and globally. That's why we have fantastic guests who are traveling globally, and it means that there is a demand for the expertise, for the contribution to the general discourse about Ukraine in Australia and globally. So who I have here today? So I have three wonderful guests. So first one in a row is Maryna Rabinovych. She's here with us visiting fellow, finally, you know, that has been in planning and arrived last month. So she's going to stay, when I say with us, it's with SITADHub, and she's in School of Comms. So I'm working with her on her research project while she's here. She gave actually a talk last week on Minsk agreements and interesting analysis. So we have recorded that and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So you can have a look if you're interested. She is a short bio. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Agder, and now SITAD visiting fellow here. She's also assistant professor at KSC, Kyiv School of Economics, right? So she's involved in working for Ukrainian University. Then I have here, next to Maryna, I have Hanna Shelest. She's Director of Security Studies Program, Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism, and Editor-in-Chief of Ukraine Analytica. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You have very busy schedules. And we have Hennadiy Maksak next to Hanna. He's Executive Director of the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism. So we're going to hear today about Ukrainian universities at war, how they, I was thinking to choose a word, how they, you know, modernize. I don't know if that's adapt. Okay, yeah, that would be a better word. And then we're going to hear about, you know, think tanks and how they're going during the war times. So I think I'll start with Maryna. I think Maryna prepared some slides, so she will give us some context on what is happening with Ukrainian universities during wartime. Then I will give some words to Hanna and Hennadiy. You'll talk about your, you know, area, right? What happens in your area. And then I have questions for all of you. You know, we can have questions from the audience that we can discuss, right? Okay, Maryna, yeah, word first to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga, and thank you very much to everyone who joined us despite the upcoming Easter celebrations, also in the birthday time in the middle of the day. As I may have guessed, we have changed our plan from initial ones we had, because initially I planned to give a bigger lecture on universities, but now I'll try to flip through the slides quite quickly, and I cannot really stop the university habit of standing. So this is a bit later, and try to be as quick as possible, but just give you a bird's eye view about how it looks like to be a Ukrainian university during the war. So first talk a little bit about how this looked like before the war and what the landscape and development has been. And after that, speak a bit about the coping strategies and how the universities have been surviving the full-scale invasion. Also with regard a bit to the future, how these coping strategies can be utilized for the purposes of reconstruction. So here you can see just some figures about how many universities there have been, so quite a lot. before the war. There have been over 200 universities, also a lot of colleges, and many specializations available with 4 levels of education, going from junior bachelor to a PhD or a Doctor of Art. And here are some universities. I put the ones that really matter to me, the Kyiv School of Economics I'm working for, Odessa National University that I'm a graduate of, and also Kyiv Mahila Academy, that is one of the oldest universities in Ukraine, and the one I'm also sometimes teaching some courses as an adjunct lecturer for. So these are the most, let's say, renowned, prestigious old universities in, and the KSC is quite novel, but still growing quite actively. So I'll just keep during through the legal framework, but just to say that during the Euromaidan, university education was a big issue, and in 2014, a new law was adopted that made universities much more autonomous and, let's say, closer to Europe in terms of joining the Bologna system, so that the credits and what students actually learn can be recognized in Europe. This made it much easier to travel, to participate in different Erasmus projects, to enhance mobility, and also increase the role of English in university education. Ukraine has been doing quite well in terms of various university ratings prior to the war. For example, this multi-rank rating, it gave Ukraine quite good scores in terms of how universities have been operating. So you can see that, for example, with regard to research and knowledge transfer, Ukraine has been doing quite well. And some universities, for example, even universities in small cities like Sumy, they have been really growing before the war, and also now during the war, they are quite resilient to the developments that we witness. And this also, so the new frameworks for mobility were introduced, and there have been quite many joint projects with Europe already prior to the war. So, however, there have been also quite some challenges. For example, the capacity of universities has been very uneven. If you take some big private university like Kyiv School of Economics, or you take some small university somewhere in Vinnytsia or in Zhytomyr, the capacity could have been quite different. Also, state funding has been always insufficient, and it has been always very difficult to develop infrastructure, which is essential for some subjects like natural sciences. And therefore, we had this chronic problem of people choosing to be economists or lawyers, but not going into the direction of technical and natural sciences. With regard to financial autonomy in state-owned institutions, there has been always quite high level of bureaucracy and really difficult to exercise the autonomy the way it functions at European universities. And also one of the big challenges has been migration. Many people have been leaving Ukraine prior to the war. Many students were choosing, for example, some small university in Poland rather than a university even in Kyiv or in Lviv, for the sake of migrating, leaving Ukraine and integrating themselves in universities. So these kind of exchanges and international cooperation has been a bit of a double-edged sword, so that some people have been using it literally as a tool to leave Ukraine and emigrate. So these have been already the challenges before the war, and with the war, definitely the situation became much, much worse. So here you can just see the one of the maps with overall situation. So some of the universities appeared to be at occupied territories, as well as some students and staff. And I would say that the key challenges are definitely related to human capital, because some people, there are irrevocable losses, the people who died because of the invasion, the people who were killed on the front. These ones we will not revoke. Also, there have been many challenges with mental health issues among students, and especially in the beginning of the war, as a person who lectures in Ukraine, I could have been receiving messages like, sorry, I cannot join the lecture just because I cannot. Not because I have some specific obstacle, but just because mentally I just can't concentrate. And people really ended up at very different situations. Some people are in a real area, like in Lviv or in Uzhhorod, living more or less their normal life. Some people ended up at occupied territories and had to either find a way to leave them or stay there. And first they were more or less able to join Zoom classes. Afterwards, it became impossible as Russian troops were even going through houses and checking whether students used some connections to Ukrainian universities. Also, there are a lot of people who ended up outside Ukraine, both staff and students, and sustaining this link with Ukraine is quite difficult. We also have the challenge of a gender gap in education science because men cannot leave Ukraine, and then many students they choose to start education because they don't want to serve in the army, and the education in higher institution allows you to have some kind of break, but in case of women, many of them left Ukraine. So there is quite some inequality. Also, for example, staff, they cannot leave Ukraine and they can participate in various fellowships, do exchange as females do. And therefore, the case here is that there is this gap in knowledge, also gap in experience, gap in cooperation that emerges. There are a lot of challenges related to infrastructure, just because universities are being bombed the same way as all other civilian infrastructure objects, and as well as operational and strategic challenges, the underfunding, the fact that we simply have less students because many people migrated and because many people are in occupied territories or have other priorities rather than education. And the most global issue looming is definitely the uncertainty how long this whole situation will be in operation and what will be the solution to the whole war. So this is on this slide, you can see the exhibition called Unissued Diplomas that is dedicated to people whose diplomas will be never handed to them. It was already in many cities in the world, and this is just to illustrate these irrevocable losses of the war. With the occupied territories, some people are just forced to get Russian passports, and afterwards they may also choose to do education in Russian educational establishments just to survive and to, let's say, adapt to the new reality. Here are the infrastructural damages with the Karazin University in Kharkiv. And with the coping, so you may think there are so many challenges, it's not possible to cope, but the good news is that many universities are coping. Many universities have been relocated. For example, Technical University from Donetsk was relocated twice, first in 2014 and then in 2022. Mariupol State Humanitarian University was relocated, so it's definitely a challenge for them to get students once they are relocated, also because not all the people are aware about these new relocated universities, but still, at least they survive as hubs of knowledge and can sustain their staff in terms of them getting paid and continuing working for universities. A lot was helpful in terms of flexibility and digitalization. So many lectures and seminars take place via Zoom, and this helps both the staff who is abroad, but also students. And there are definitely new chances and new opportunities with these. Students use a lot of different platforms like Moodle, like Canvas, where you can upload a lot of materials and teach them also being a bit more self-sufficient in learning. And I think my students became much more self-sufficient than they were during Corona times when they were complaining about the systems, but I think now they're much more used to them. And also they think become quite civically aware and strong in terms of what they want. So here I was teaching a course last year in Kyiv Academy, just the first year course about introduction to international relations. And my female students took initiative to take an interview from Oksana Markarova, the ambassador of Ukraine to the United States, which was a surprise to me. The assignment was just find somebody who is somehow connected to international relations and make an interview. And they decided, okay, we're not interested in some low-level things. We're just going to write Ukrainian ambassador in the US and get an interview. I think they were themselves a bit surprised that she responded, but she responded very quickly, and then they had a very nice interview. And overall, with this assignment, I understood that really children are over this kind of Soviet mentality. How they're going to write to this high executive, how they're going to write to the ambassador, no, became totally a normal thing. They also spoke to Ukrainian ambassador to Israel and to some other high-level officials, and this is really something that helps people cope because they feel themselves connected and feel the initiative to do things the way they like. There has been an alliance Ukrainian universities established also to promote a bit more exchange between universities themselves and providing help to each other. And a big role belongs to international cooperation with the various ways to help Ukrainian universities and students, starting from academic mobility to offering some fellowships and financial support to academics who are still in Ukraine. Combining these two elements, as well as offering opportunities for students, doing some joint research and capacity building projects, and also concluding some wider partnerships, like the partnership, for example, between the Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway and the Karazin University in Kharkiv. They have been already having cooperation prior to the war, but during the war, they really became very close. And we've been at one event at the Oslo Metropolitan when they invited colleagues from Karazin, and you could have seen how much also people-to-people bond emerged and how much Norwegians were really willing to provide them with anything they needed in terms of both financial help and infrastructure. And what was important that now, because of this people-to-people bond, they really very well know their needs and what this particular university needs at this particular stage. Also there have been the idea of Ukrainian Global University, just the way, let's say, to unite forces to make academic mobility stronger than it was before. I was also involved in the Central European University Invisible University for Ukraine, a kind of an initiative where people were joining their forces to give lectures to Ukrainian students, irrespective of whether they are based in Ukraine, at occupied territories, or abroad. And when I was conducting the module in 2022, we still had a lot of people from occupied territories, which was really heartbreaking to see how they were trying to join. And at some point it was more successful, some point less. Also, this was still an era of blackouts. So we had, again, to be very creative in terms of digitalization and finding opportunities to communicate. So higher education is definitely very important for getting people reintegrated, because it's important for them that education is of high quality. And this is a bit of a vicious circle. On the one hand, you need people to come back in order to build the capacity of education. On the other hand, people want education to be quality in order for their children to come back. So here is some let's say, place where these various options involving foreign institutions are very important. I would really say that it would have been a good idea to develop integration programs so that people receive good offers involving studies, work, housing, so that they can really consider the option of coming back, especially if they come from occupied territories and don't have a place to live. So to conclude, Russia's invasion really exacerbated both challenges that the Ukrainian educational system already had before the war. There have been very good coping strategies in terms of digitalization for the community and in terms of meeting the needs of various groups that needed help. And I think it's when the war is over, and probably even before this moment, it's really worthwhile to think about some longer-term reintegration offers so that people who want to come back can have this option and can have some backing in these terms and not just be self-sufficient in this. So thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very so much. Okay, should we give a word? Okay, to Hennadiy, right? Okay, Hennadiy, you can talk about your work, right, and what's happening in think tank space, and then I will have some questions.
Thank you so much. So privileged to be here and to share what we experience in think tank world in Ukraine. Let me start from a small brief on our side. Foreign Policy Council Ukraine is a non-governmental think tank in Ukraine dealing with foreign policy and international security. At the moment, we tend to think, and I think truth is there, we are one of the biggest one when it comes to non-governmental think tanks dealing with these areas from policy and security. And we one of few who are trying to see comprehensively on this issue, trying to assess all the direction from policy, trying to find some common denominator. And our joint signature project we have in our team, which is scorecards. So we have been doing it for 9 years in a row, each year, 50 directions of foreign policy of Ukraine, trying to assess performance. But just coming closer to the topic of our discussion, how we operate, think tank community in Ukraine in times of war. Let me start from small private or our corporate perspective from February 23 of 2022. On that day, we have more or less the same premises of our office in Kiev. There was a big group of international experts coming to our office with a single question, which was natural at the time. What is the likelihood of full-scale aggression? And seriously, we were trying to throw on the table different arguments, rational arguments, what's very costly, why it is not possible to just have full-scale aggression for Putin at the time. And basically, we persuaded our counterparts in that, and maybe persuaded ourselves that it's not rational. There will be no, for Donbass, for these two regions, partly occupied, in our sense, it was 100% likelihood, but for all Ukraine, it was beyond our expectation. But just overnight, there was a phone call from my mom. She is in Chernihiv. This is the region which borders with Russia and Belarus. And she was saying, children, we are under shelling. So it was quite a rude awakening, I would say, for us into war mode of activity. And I think maybe the same was experienced for other think tanks. We have a handful of dealing with foreign policy in Ukraine. And I think that the first chaos we had in our heads was maybe associated with our challenging our knowledge and our way and role of thinking. Are we able to just give information to policymakers if we were not able to predict this kind of aggression? So it was a really revealing moment for all of us what to do. And it took some time for us to understand that in general terms, we were right. In 1.5 months, Putin withdrew his forces from central part of Ukraine, exactly for the same reasons that we indicated. But we were not in position to envisage that he would try that at that time. So trying to see ourselves from different lenses, are we capable? So are we those guys to talk to our MFA, to our MOD, and just to give them advices on some regional perspectives, on some functional perspectives? It took some time, and I think it's our major experience of our team. Next point or next phase, all the trace for this period I could name from survival to resistance. So now I'm trying to refer to our survival. Second point, maybe in 2 weeks, in 1 month, it was how to reshape our activity due to personal security reasons and due to institutional restrictions. Being in war, being in time when your office is not operational, you have no electricity, you have no possibilities to do. And what we tried to do as a big think tank, and I think that it was also the way for others to follow, that we tried to reorient resources we have in our budget for security needs of our team. For those who stayed in occupation or in blockade, just to be able to be out of this place, to save a place in Ukraine or outside, or to orient this money for different other needs, for example, how to not to organize 1-2 conferences, but to buy 2 industrial electric generators for hospitals and to transfer them to the places where it is needed in our native city or in other places. So it was quite an important and also relevant time for us to see from outside, from our Bible, what we can do for our people, for our family, team as a family, and for our relatives, parents, and friends in different places. And reorientation was the first phase, and also launching humanitarian assistance initiatives. We are not do tank, we think tank. We are trying to generate expertise and to share with those who made decisions. But it appeared that at that time we also we were needed as a part of humanitarian assistance providers for Ukraine. Being in connection with all over the world, with different think tanks, so there's partners in diplomacy, in other spheres, in consultancy, we try to generate money and generate some kind of other assistance for Ukraine, be it drones, be it anti-drone rifles, so be it my perspective, even just being here, I'm here as a volunteer because to be out of Ukraine, I have to obtain permission. And my permission is as a volunteer. I have to be back in Ukraine with some humanitarian stuff, like truck with some food or ambulance or something like that. So I think we tried to do that on institutional level, and we launched a humanitarian initiative within our think tank as well. It took some time to operate our think tank in that kind of environments. After I would go to the next point, to the next phase, and then we tried to adjust ourselves to wartime diplomacy mode. We understood that now it is a matter of survival for us, maybe to reshape the expertise and activity we do at think tankers. So we already regained some consciousness as think tankers that we also important in this regard. So, and we tried to look deeper on all elements of wartime expertise, although we were experts maybe in quite other areas. For Hanna, it was a natural space. She is leading expert on security and defense, but for others, it was also time looking for another expertise, for them on sanctions regimes, how they operate worldwide in EU and in the US, in other partners, legislative environments. Have to talk and have to get some better understanding of justice dimension of war. How to bring to responsibility those who committed war crimes or crimes of aggression. How to deal with confiscating and freezing sovereign assets of Russia. So these are quite complicated issues, but they just became part of our reality. And we had to gain some expertise to talk to decision makers in our country and abroad. So it was the first part. We tried to enrich our expertise on all this, along all these elements I mentioned. Then we tried to create advocacy teams, those willing to talk to our partners, to provide them with information, maybe to persuade in some ways with our arguments that there should be more assistance when it comes to sanctions, when it comes to weapon deliveries, when it comes to other areas I indicated. So it was not only the team of our think tank. We tried to expand our outreach. So we worked with other think tankers from Ukraine, with researchers, with consultants, and in that of the day, now we have quite stable groups which operate already in this shape for quite a while and trying to just find their niche. For example, we have our partners, they work for advocating F-16s, for example, coalition, or to make Russia pay to confiscate these assets and to give them work for Ukrainian recovery. So it was also quite interesting time being of our organization. I think it also might be a general characteristic of the period in the think tank community in Ukraine. And also we experienced some institutional transformations. Although we had quite a number of study programs within our organization, we understood we have to focus more on some specific areas. That is how we reinvigorated or revisited our program on Russian and Belarusian studies. Why Russia and Belarus? Because both of them committed crime of aggression. So we have to deal with them in the same specific way. We also opened a special program for Latin America studies, precisely because we have to talk to our partners on different continents and to make our part of the story truthful for them. Because Russia makes a lot of effort there, and sometimes when you encounter people and talk to them, and they generally believe in what they saw and heard from Russia, it makes some time to just Latin America, in Africa, or maybe in Asia Pacific region, it's also quite the case. But it was our initial idea why we need more expertise, more institutionalized expertise within our institution. That's why we created a program on Latin America, and now from this year on, we have a program on global partnership. Hanna is in as well. She's a universal soldier now, team. But
it's also one of the challenges of the
yes,
wartime
yes,
diplomacy.
yes. Just to continue with that, we opened office in Brussels to talk to European institutions, because at the moment, European Union is the largest supplier, is the support of Ukraine, and large when it comes to financial support, weapons, sanctions, and so on. So we have to talk to them and maybe to explain some details or some sensitive issues which are on the agenda of Ukraine and European Union, how to deal with Russian aggression. So that's what we have at this moment. I think now we understand with war attrition, this is sad news for us, essentially, but we understand that this conflict, this war will be prolonged, and we have to think long term. And from some ad hoc initiatives we have launched, we have to transfer our shift of our lenses to long-term planning. If we have these visits to the region, for example, Hanna's program already organized visits to South Korea, to India, to Singapore, and yet some in nearest future. I think our understanding how to make it comprehensive and stable. If you have this meeting not only once in a while, but maybe on regular basis, one in a year, trying to measure if there are any kind of change in what way. So how we could help or complement the expertise from other think tanks or from other teams and delegations that are present in this region. And I will stop with the question. It's an open question for us so far, but I think it's the start of a new phase with, as I said, war attrition and prolonged conflict. What to expect in years to come for our expert community. I think that we will try to deepen our expertise regional-wise and topic-wise, and to be partners for our public agencies, because we see added value from what we do while we talk to our peers in different countries. And I think that this added value is something unique and important to create, I think, the general approach to communication worldwide, what Ukraine needs and how to just secure upper hand of Ukraine in this conflict, and how to secure just and sustainable peace. I'll stop here.
I probably had 3 sentences to build up on what Hennadiy been already talking about. First is that we definitely witnessed the last 2 years that from competition among the think tanks, we are coming more and more to cooperation. So
can you tell like landscape a little bit how big it is? So is it top 3 think tanks?
It is more, because what is interesting that before 2014, de facto, we had only one think tank that was presidential think tank where I worked that dealt with foreign policy. There were no independent foreign policy think tanks. That sphere was very closed, and all specialists we had, they were attached to the universities. But definitely being attached to the universities, it is not the policy oriented, and it was quite limited. After 2014, that was a boom. Some were small, like 2 people think tanks, some were bigger, some are just added foreign policy programs to them. After 2022, we saw that some of the think tanks that used to, for example, deal with the anti-corruption, they suddenly started to have a big outreach programs as well. So they are having trips with us, they're meeting, they're advocating. So in their case, it's not always the expertise in the foreign policy, for example, but very strong advocating. So and universities also became more active in this domain, such universities, Ukrainian Catholic University or Kyiv Mogila, that stopped to be just a pure academic, but also built their centers, what before 2014 we didn't have. So as a result, I can say that at least depending on the topic, but 10, 15 think tanks about which we can speak probably, or NGOs, because it's, as we said, it is sometimes the question is, because big energy think tank, Dixie Group, yes, they're best of the best in energy, but then they also involved in European Union integration through the lens of energy. So there is sometimes those which are trans-topical. And like in total, that would bring probably this amount of those who are involved in advocacy trips, especially and in being in advice groups when it is the strategies building. But at least those who are dealing with the crucial topics like European Union integration, like NATO, a certain normal competition definitely exists, otherwise you would not improve, or donors, you're definitely competing for the money. But when it is really urgent topic, Vilnius summit, it's normal to call, let's meet at our office, let's discuss what will be the position of what we can advise. The topic of the peace formula, and for the ministry, sometimes it is also easier to call to one think tank and say, like, can you gather everybody? We are coming to you. We don't want it to be at our territory to see it political, but we want your advice. Can we come to you? So in this way, you see that it became normal, not just to run for the ear, but also to have these brainstorming more or less, or joint trips, what also became like, we may not have expertise in the particular topic, like we don't have the people in our team who are working with reconstruction and development. We don't have economists in this way, but traveling to South Korea.
Because of the war.
Yes, but more, I mean, in this, we have the macroeconomic specialist, yeah, but if you go to more of the, like some technical issues of reconstruction, but we have a wonderful think tank where they have specialists. So traveling to South Korea, where they are very interested in this topic, we are just calling and asking, can you come with us? Like, we are ready to take. Absolute openness, readiness, and that's one of the important positive things over here. The second positive thing that happened, that is the greater media presence. That both Ukrainian and international media started to know Ukrainian experts, calling them for the commands. Here is definitely also a challenge because you have the not all experts are able to speak in the manner that media not prefers, but let's say used. Yeah, they like the long speeches at some of the events. So that's something that they needed to train, or it's not even a special training, but you need experience. Yeah, you had it. It's after 2 years became much better. And second is the language. Because we appeared in the situation when you had foreign policy experts who could speak, but when some expertise were needed on environmental issues, after especially Kakhovka Dam, for example, I couldn't find any specialist in Ukraine from the think tanks who could fluently speak with BBC about this topic. And those journalists who are coming to Ukraine, they're with fixers, with translators, that's not a problem. But as soon as you have a quick call, and as a result, us needed to talk on each topic, what usually we don't like, because I cannot speak about nuclear security, about European integration, about this, but at a certain moment you needed to do it because you had 2 minutes. Okay, for 2 minutes, I can quickly read what my colleagues from the environment, that's why we have the special chats, the Crimea platform, we have a chat and immediately, do we have expertise in this? And they're just sending you their reports so we can have at least the basic understanding and then refer, like, please read report of this organization. So this media became positive, but very challenging in some of the issues. And but the third problem, it's really a problem that we have now, I think, or at least a huge challenge. Originally, it was the great initiative that so many big think tanks and international, and universities and organizations, they started immediately propose fellowships for Ukrainians. Many of them were relocation fellowships. And if Maryna fellowship is a small one, and that's okay, I mean, the short term, like 1 month, yep, you're easily going, you're returning.
But no region.
Yeah.
Alone.
But Norwegian happened before the
yeah,
war,
yeah.
So that's a little bit different. But a lot of those were particular for Ukrainians, different institutions. And that was great. We finally received the success. We received our voices at these cities, places, countries. But at the same time, it was a twofold because we immediately started lacking experts inside of Ukraine and those who would advise the policymakers. And when I need to gather experts on the certain topics, I don't know whom to call because not all meetings can be done by Zoom. There are certain topics where the ministries would like to have a more confidential conversation. And you cannot be present at some of the meetings that limited your communication sometimes with those who are making decision. And also it for a lot of our foreign counterparts, they would like to have a first-hand information. I receive a lot of the requests because I'm in Odessa, because I see it by my eyes, I feel it here, I can provide it with them as they perceive it more realistic approach than the person who is sitting somewhere in Florence or in London. And I cannot say why I said it's not a problem, but the challenge, because yes, on one hand, we have our voice in London, and at any event, the person can come and really bring the topic. But at the same time, we are lacking these voices in Ukraine, and that is not the balance that you really can bring. And we don't know how many of these experts would return back as well. That's also the question. Add to these that male cannot travel. So most of my trips, when I need male experts, or I'm traveling to some countries where it would not be perceived very well if it is just female delegation, I understand that I have limits, and that's each time the huge challenge. And the last issue that became, because we're at the university, and that's probably what is challenge both to universities and think tanks, we started to receive from the academic colleagues, it's less with the think tanks, but a lot with the university professors. Oh, Ukrainians, you're so emotional, you should not be invited to this conference, you will be very emotional talking about Ukraine. Nobody cares.
I'm hearing, right? I don't think
because you're here, that's the issue.
Makeup during
Yeah.
conferences.
We had it many of the times that,
stranger.
why don't you want to sit with Russians at that conference? I said, maybe because I know this Russian for 20 years and I know what this person would be talking about. And if you would like to give Russian propaganda to your students, and that's not somebody from what we call good Russians even, but somebody with a very strong position supporting the war. And you as a university insisting that it is the second opinion.
Is it Europe, US?
No, we had these cases even in Ireland. So it's not a country affiliated problem. These problem we found, but as I said, it is very seldom at the think tanks level, but it is very often when the universities are organizers of the events. They are talking about the freedom of speech, academic freedom, so they are putting on this a lot, what we respect definitely, but for them sometimes that is becoming extreme because they present that they can speak about the Russian position about the war. They said, do you know that this professor was gathering money for their armed forces? Would you need his post in the social networks? Yeah, but that is the Russian position in this war, and that is always two sides of the war. I said, thank you, 20 years I'm dealing with wars around the globe, and I've been in many war zones. And I have doubts you will be able even to put them in one room, and you would like now the aggressor position just with for the students who don't know the everything. Yeah, so it's not the room of experts who can challenge it. And unfortunately, that's presented as the liberal thinking without the certain moral compass. And we had these, like not once, but in quite a number of countries, and that's not a global south. What is interesting, that it is even more in the Western universities rather than in the Eastern. And then from them, like, oh, no, this conference is very is academic. We would like to hear the sober analysis, and you will be speaking about kidnapping of kids and killing of your citizens. I said, yeah, you would like to speak about the war. So definitely we will speak about this, that is the elements of the war. It's not something like this, but you would like me to analyze this from the constructivist point of view or from the Marxist point of view. I can do it, but we still will speak about kidnapped kids or something like this. And that's quite an interesting from where it is coming. So how to balance with these delivering, as I said, that is the between the academic freedom and the moral compass that we are still probably struggling much more than talking with some politicians in Hungary or in Italy before, where you just need to like politically persuade why it is important to support Ukraine.
Okay, so I can do maybe a little bit of questions and then I'll open it to everyone else. Quick question. So you definitely both say university, the speaker and think tank speaker, you both outlined the key challenges, so we get it, right? What was the role, and you touched on it a little bit, of the international community? So in your case, did you get more funding? You know, did they offer you Brussels office or did you generate it yourself? In the sense you're going to India, Singapore, is it always through government links or are you arranging the meetings directly? Like, are there more interest from the international community themselves reaching out to you, like, oh, how you are, why you're here, by the way, today in Australia? That'll be interesting to know. I don't know the details. Yeah, so this is a role of international community, you know, in your work. And to Maryna as well, you know, what do you feel about this global programs that other universities are suggesting, you know, like how do you feel about this global scholars at risk program? Did many of them who did some fellowships, like a 1-year position, did they convert it to 10 years? Like what people are now left with? Yeah, so like what's the role of the international players in this, you know, in supporting the operations and maybe expanding?
I will start maybe then you can what Hanna said, it was from I would say, my stage of individual security, then many think tanks and partners propose fellowships. And in that particular time, it was really a matter of survival, because being without any facilities, any services provided, it would be difficult for you to stay in your function, in your organization. So it helped us to stay the course and just to continue our research and our just advocation, what we try to do in terms of wartime diplomacy. From other hand, there was an interest which was quite increased on side of universities, on side of partners, to Ukrainian studies, to Ukrainian voices. And in the first year, it was more evident than in 2023, unfortunately, but we saw that there were more possibilities in platforms to talk. Sometimes it tried to play these both sides, but sometimes it was possible just to give information and observation about the situation on the ground. And that for Ukrainians, it was more important not only to win on the battlefield, but to have also justice, and to have Russia pay for all done in Ukraine. So I think on that side, partners help us a lot. And we created a lot of good synergies at the moment. And that's why we also understood that, as also mentioned already, you know, that it is a problem for us to get outside Ukraine. While we had prior to big war, there was possibility to have 2 hours and you're in Brussels or in other places. Now it takes 2-3 days sometimes to get to that place. I mean, Brussels for me. So it's not always convenient and it's always physically possible. So I think those new affiliations, for example, for Evgenia as Plenty Council, for Hanna as a SIPA, for me as a GlobSec, we tried to be part of these institutions, part of this expertise, and help them also to understand Ukraine, because I think that it is still a big pain for many to understand Ukraine, what is our cause and what we're trying to do with all support on the box. So I think there was a great support, and financial support was also following our needs, luckily. Our Brussels office was also supported by partners, because we just demonstrated that our main mission is to talk more about what we see by our own eyes in this world. Yeah. So yeah.
I would say that yes, definitely fellowships were number one. In terms of the financing, I can't say where they're more or less, because there were a lot of reprioritization. Initially, we had a lot of the financing coming short term that called for the resilience of the organizations, where the donors allowed us to buy generators or to relocate the team or something like more for the needs, a little bit for the institutional if you need to pay for the office and you don't have the grants, something like this. We definitely, a lot of the donors were flexible to allow us to spend money differently. As for example, we had money for the events, please spend it for the humanitarian aid. That was okay, we trust you. Also was very interesting that all of the think tanks, they registered as NGO. Charity is different by the Ukrainian legislation with different reporting, everything like charities are not NGOs, they are two different entities. However, the government of Ukraine adopted a legislation allowing during the wartime for the NGOs to work as charities, so providing the services as well. And that's allowed a lot of donors in the first year of the war to channel their support through us because they trusted our managers, our accountants, our integrity. And even if they had several $1,000s that they could easily transfer it, for them, either to search some initiatives, it was easier to give us because they trusted us. So that was some of the initial initiatives. Then we started to have financing a lot for the topics that not always were, I mean, a lot for the reconstruction now started to go for some research. It's still a lot for the European Union integration and everything connected with this because that was set as the priority for Ukraine. It started to be a little bit more difficult with the classical research because everybody would like to have actions as well, not just the research what we'll do with this research. So priorities of the donors sometimes change, not always checking what are the priorities, because like they prioritize everything connected with the war or with the temporarily occupied territories, what is impossible. But then the question is, but okay, what with all other activities that we have within Ukraine? And a lot of the donors like USAID and others who usually put in two baskets, they started to put all the baskets only to the, I don't know, sociological research about the perception of the people at the territory of Kherson region. And then you have 5 big donors who would like to invest only in this, not reading reports of each other. But you are asking for some, okay, let's speak about, I don't know, some other issues that are happening, relations with Hungary, because Hungary are blocking the assistance to Ukraine. No, but that is regular for it's not a priority or something like this. So these you feel sometimes this discrepancy between what we see as a priority and what donors see as a priority. It's now more stabilizing. And the new topic that definitely came is the global outreach. Because previously we had, if it was advocacy, we easily could get for Europe or US. So we used to have the trips like these to Germany, to Sweden, I mean, all European countries, because that was more about the advocating European and NATO integration for Ukraine. Since the beginning of the war, the donors came and said, okay, we are ready to invest more. But I would say that that is predominantly 2 organizations who are doing it. The British government and the Open Society Foundation who realized this. We need to go globally. Let's go to Asia, let's go to Africa, let's go to Latin America. It's more expensive, but we understand why it is needed.
What do you do on these visits?
Usually, like if to speak about our project, this for the new global partnership, as we called it. So we didn't want just the advocacy visits. Advocacy component is definitely there, but we realized that Ukraine was absent in many of these countries. Even that there is countries like Australia that supports Ukraine, but still it is absence of the expert diplomacy, of the expert networking, some university connections, but not that much as we would like to have. And here language is not the issue. Yeah, when it is South Korea, you can say, oh, language is the issue. No, no issue. So we are made this project threefold. First, it is the proper research for each country with the paper presentation about bilateral relations, trying to understand what is there, and with the briefing of our policymakers about, look, what it is. With the ad hoc, with the public article, like with the outreach inside of the country. The second, it is the public events, like online roundtables to establish this like awareness and the meeting, at least online. And the third one is visit to each country. Usually it is 2-3 days. in our case, there's 10 countries, very different, as you can see, India or Australia, Canada or Brazil. But we meet with the think tanks. We try to establish certain cooperation projects with them after this, like what we can do, what research we can do together. And it's not always about bilateral relations, but for example, Korea was very interested in maritime security.
Do you do it through government?
No,
You don't. So you operate as separate, like you don't really connect like.
that's again about the wartime diplomacy.
Yeah,
So we are doing it independent. I'm writing to each of the think tanks by myself saying like, okay, X, Y, Z, we would like to meet because we know what are the best think tanks or universities.
Example, Australia, whom you met.
But yeah, here we met ASPI and Australia and Institute of International Affairs and Australian National University in Canberra. Here we with Lowy and with UTS. Plus we are meeting with the ministries and with the parliaments, usually in each of these countries, and with media. We've been in the National Press Club yesterday. We did absolutely the same in India and South Korea. Dina was journalist because it is the long term. It is trying to get what they know and what we. But why? But for each country, we inform the embassy. And then it is up to the embassy
To assist you.
to assist or not. Luckily, in most of the countries we've been till now, we had very good ambassadors who tried. But what is interesting, it is twofold, because in some of the countries we have better connections than our embassies. Sometimes it's just very new ambassador who just arrived. And for ambassador, it is interesting to come with us because not all think tanks are ready to meet with ambassadors because it's very political. But if ambassador is coming with the think tanks and establishing these connections, we understand that we are leaving, but ambassador is already will be invited for some events or for some possibility to talk. So we are definitely playing with this.
Who has funded you to come to Australia?
What?
Who has funded you to come to Australia?
Open Society Foundation. In our case, this project for these 10 countries, it is Open Society Foundation. It's what you know as a Soros originally, but officially Open Society Foundation. But their key of it is International Renaissance Foundation. Why we emphasize it? Because International Renaissance Foundation has the money of OSF, but totally Ukrainian board and Ukrainian management. So it is not New York office who is deciding, it is the Kiev and Ukrainians who are deciding the priorities. That's why it is very helpful. They understand better what is there. So this grant is quite small if you compare it to what the strategic communication companies received for similar activities, but without any research. So it's not a secret, I can tell that for 1 year project with 10 countries with such long traveling, so you understand it's just tickets cost.
Yeah.
The whole budget is $140,000.
Okay, that's tight, right? Yeah.
It's really tight.
Especially if you're traveling, guys, 5 of you, or how many of you guys?
Four of us to each of the country, and I mean tickets to Australia is 2,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Question from.
Yes, sorry, Maria.
I think it was a question for Maryna, because I remember you were saying that universities move from place to place. Now, I don't know how hard it is to move UTS from here from Bangalore. And so I'm not quite sure how big the universities are. But then the question I have, why don't universities move, say, to Moldova or Kazakhstan? I mean, because that makes it easier to teach Ukrainian without bombs falling. And I draw from my own experience that you don't have to move the university, but the university can establish a branch or something. I know I used to go to Shanghai and Kuala Lumpur and lecture there. So why are you restricted to only moving to other parts of Ukraine, not to Moldova, not to Kazakhstan?
Australia.
Maybe not to Poland, because then we see NATO involved with something. Gone, but nevertheless, I mean, that's my question. You know, why? I mean, we had a previous visitor, 2 visitors ago. They said that Russians are sort of bombing historical articles, and so why isn't are we Ukraine doing something to move some of this out of Ukraine, preserve them, and then hopefully when the war finishes, move everything back again? Okay, any question?
Thank you. I think it's final first.
That's what think.
Yeah.
Think tanks.
I think I'll first address Ola's question about the fellowships and give me a little bit of time also to think and find a creative answer to your question. So about the fellowships, as I said, I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It was already used before the war because many people have been using, and it's also not a secret, various fellowships for the purpose of moving abroad. And nowadays, during the war, this is a way to stay abroad. There are fellowships that last several months. There are fellowships that last 1 year. However, Ola, coming to your thing, it doesn't really mean you're going to get the tenure. Because I think in order to get the tenure, you need to be much more integrated into the educational system in the country where you're doing a fellowship. Also, usually fellowships don't lead to this. There are various trajectories that emerge because of fellowships, particularly kind of personal trajectories. So there are people who are just moving from a fellowship to a fellowship, being abroad, but not integrating into the educational and research landscapes of a specific country. They are experts in something, let us say, and then they are just doing 1 year here, 2 years here, 3 years there, which is, I would say, psychologically very challenging. And it also really influences your family situation. It influences your planning because your children and so on. You know, the colleague whose child has been at school probably at 3 different countries, and he speaks various languages fluently, and he even says, Mama, I want you to apply more to different programs because I want to live in different countries. But at the same time, I could imagine there could be children who will be negatively affected by their parents all the time moving from fellowship to fellowship. Also in case of
But
families.
that's what you're doing now. The bomb falls over there, you have to move from there to here.
Yeah, in some cases, really, it becomes a big family problem. If both persons are in academia and think tanks, then they need to agree, or they live in several places and go here and there. So it's very difficult.
Anyway, that's my question.
There are
But I
other
think it's also sort of think tank.
and there are other people who are basically just deciding for themselves that they will apply efforts to integrate into the research and academic landscape in the country where they acquired the fellowship. And if they're successful, if they learn a language, if we speak about Germany, Switzerland, Norway, and so on, then they apply for 10 years and eventually get them or not get them. And if they get them, they become more and more integrated.
I know
into
one
this
successful
country.
case, like, which is really good, by the way, at University of Sydney. There was a teacher, no, professor from Kharkiv University teaching mathematics, though. So it's not arts and social sciences, it's a bit different. And she went through Scholars at Risk, I think, program. Maybe, I'm not sure. And then she got a tenure, like they offered her a job. So she's now there permanently.
So this is
And it's fantastic, but it's, again, it's mathematics.
Yeah.
It's something that, probably, Australia lacks of expertise,
but
right?
it's also a brain drain. So this is a
Agreed.
double-edged sword. For Ukraine, it may be a brain
And she's like in her 60s, so it's like really nice case, of person
in
relocated.
some terms, it's a brain drain. In other terms,
Yeah, but you
can
know
also
what problems faced by individuals, yes.
Yep.
But if you have a look at Ukraine as a whole, wouldn't it be a good idea to establish a campus in Kazakhstan to continue teaching Ukrainian? Yes, I mean, maybe you don't want to move there, but.
No, it's not
other
about
people-
not moving. I'm teaching at the Ukrainian Catholic University, for example, in Lviv. And okay, let's speak about Donetsk and how it happened. First of all, from 2014 till 2022.
So what?
From 2014 till 2022 in Donetsk.
Yeah.
When Donetsk was already occupied, the university moved, but it was only 5% of the country occupied, and there were no daily shelling or something. So at that time, they just evacuated university because most of the university professors appeared, like, for example, Department of International Relations, where they had very good School of Security and American Studies. All of them were considered as the enemies, and they just needed to run away. And they established university in Mariupol. We are speaking about approximately 15,000 students.
Let's see, Mariupol was still in Ukraine.
Yes,
Yeah, but
yes.
that was,
That's why I said why the first relocations happened just in Ukraine. Yeah, because you had just 2 cities occupied, so you needed just to move it there. And yes, some professor, Tavria University was also moved, so and Lugansk University. So 3 universities were moved to the governmental controlled territories together with approximately 15,000 students. Not bigger than Odessa. Odessa was 17,000, so I assume that Donetsk was approximately the same size as us. But quite big, 15,000 is not a small college. But then when everything started, most COVID partially helped because a lot of the professors already and students used for the online lectures. So it was the individual decisions. Lectures continued, but you're just in the different places. And then it is just the agreement. For example, I'm sitting in Odessa, my students mostly in Lviv, but many in the other places. And we just have the agreement. Guys, in case it is the air raid in your particular city, you have it on your telephone. I don't see all cities. You're not telling me anything. You're just going to the shelter. I know that if you're like out in the middle of the lecture, that's the case. And that became this flexibility for them. Some evacuated immediately abroad and wanted to be there, even from the places that we consider more or less, let's say, safer than others. But they continue to have lectures from abroad. They don't want to stop with that. Now just try to imagine you have university with all the libraries, documents, materials, everything. How much will it cost?
But all of that is electronic now.
No, you cannot have chemistry and electronics. You need your laboratory. No, but I mean that what you're trying to say, and not all books are in electronics. You don't have everything in digital. That's not that digitalized. Even it depends on your in foreign policy. That's easier. Most of what we have, yes. But if you go to other departments, that Department of History, most of their books are definitely not digitalized because they're saved in the proper boxes, protected and everything. Unfortunately, we didn't have that money for the universities to digitalize all our libraries. We wish we could have. So I would say, and then you still have cities where you can continue, like in Chernovtsi, we're a very strong university. They didn't have any shelling at all because they are like in the pocket of Romania, and that was much safer. So each university could make this decision. We have a lot of universities. It's not that one university that could be moved, what to do with all others. And then how you will move men. So you have 50% of young men, they're not allowed to leave the country. So are you doing the female colleges? What will be with the male education? So male students, they are not conscripted, but they still cannot leave the country. So what do you do with male students and with their level of stuff? And male staff?
I'm not saying it's easy, but
Oh, I don't think it's
think
really
things might think
possible.
about it.
No, but for think tanks, if we are out of the country, how will I advise my government? What is the role of the think tank if I'm out? I can be, like I had proposals from any around the globe, but
Telephone them.
not all topics can be telephoned considering in what conditions we're.
And there's other technology.
It's still a lot of the topics that you cannot brief through the German generals just had this issue.
I
When,
think
they
maybe
released-
just to comment what Hanna said, one small remark. Maybe Zelensky's remark or replied for advice to leave the country. He said we need armor, not a taxing.
Yeah, I remember.
I think maybe the same with think tanks. We need support sometimes for us personally, just to continue activity, but not to lose touch with the country. If you're not on ground, how you could assess what you can advise. I think it's also a part of our nature.
Okay, yeah, so I'm just mindful of time. Let's have the last question, okay? And then we can round it up. Yes.
Okay, thank you. My question's got 2 parts. First of all, can you just summarize the key activities of the think tanks in one word? one word for each think tank. And secondly, you mentioned about Brussels.
Yep.
Is that because of NATO or because of US or because of European Union, or like how does that fit into the arrangements?
Good question. So what think tanks do at large, you ask?
Yeah, just
In
one word for each think tank.
for each, you mean?
Or for example,
Like,
for each think tank, do you have one on infrastructure, energy, education, rehabilitation? I'm just trying to get my head around what each think tank actually focuses on, or is it wide ranging within?
No, we have the big energy studies think tank. For example, we have the defense strategies. We have several economic policies think tank. We have several foreign policy think tanks. There you will have a broad range of the topics. We have few think tanks that are doing with the electoral and democracy issues. We have several think tanks dealing with the environmental issues. So that it is more of the NGOs that are doing with the gender. Education, yeah, we have one quite a good think tank that is doing with the educational reforms and everything. Then you have cultural studies and everything connected with the, I mean, not cultural in terms of museum or something, but more of the management and everything connected with the wider topic of culture. What else? We have a few think tanks that have their broad range, like they have domestic politics, they have defense policy, they have economics, and they have foreign policy. So they're trying to cover the whole spectrum. That's like Rabinovych, yep, center. That is a lot of human rights organizations that are working on the edge. So you cannot say that they're just defenders of the human rights because they're doing a lot of the research connected with the tribunal, for example, with the justice, with the reintegration of the occupied territory. So they're working with a lot of the producers.
How's that funnel up into the government? Is it, do you then present those findings officially through the government departments, through the ministers of each area, or how's it like integrated up? We'll come back to Brussels in a minute.
Yeah. There are three ways. First is the public outreach, because sometimes you need to make the topic public to attract attention to it. So it's publishing and so on. It's events. So it can be closed door events for the discussions where a lot of the decision makers are invited.
Information gathered.
No, not only for delivering as well. So when you're gathering and say, okay, we had the research, that is the finding. What we will do with these, that is our recommendations, how to work with this. And there you're usually gathering people from parliament, from ministries, and if your think tank has the good reputation, they're coming there. And the third, it is when they are initiators. And here it can be everything from the requests, like we've been regularly receiving requests, for example, from members of parliament or from the MFA. We need the policy brief on this topic. Can you draft it for us? They are not paying for this, unfortunately, but at least they're asking for this. So that is the for when they're requesting. No, they're not funding us. We have government is not giving us.
Non-counter, so no direct connection. We help them, but we have our own expertise, which is detached from any policy making.
Only one think tank, the presidential think tank, who has the state budget. They are the only one. All others, if it's because the government, according to the law, are not allowed to give grants. They can pay for services. And we as non-profit cannot take money for services, otherwise we are losing our non-profit status. So it is the
So your fund, so the work is essentially voluntary within the scope of.
It can be paid by some of the projects. For example, when we have this allocation of the money for the policy briefs, and government knows that, for example, we have some funding that they can request writing. Public councils as well. Yeah, just to finish, and when they are writing some strategies, they are calling and making the working groups, for example. They are creating the working groups where experts are gathered and can work.
Can I just follow up your question? What is your measure of success? You know, is it, what do you?
It will be the last question, okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't have success in this, yeah.
Still the Brussels.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pull to him.
I think we try to follow the example of public think tanks from other European countries, from Poland, from Germany, from many other countries, which have their branches in Brussels. What they're trying to do, the expertise they generate in their think tanks, they have to advocate. In our, you asked about NATO, EU, for us, it both these institutions, but plus other areas of expertise, because in time of war, we have our track with integration to European Union. This is one big area of expertise. Then trying to cooperate with NATO, another big area of expertise, but plus sanctions. What we're trying to do, we ask or talk to those institutions in European Union who deal with sanctions and say, okay, guys, you have this package of sanctions, but when we hit missile, we found 300 spare parts from European enterprises. So please take care of that. So trying to advocate this story about financial support, about weapons. So all other areas also on our table to communicate. About history of success, one recent example, we have been advocating for opening European industries, defense industries program for Ukraine. Because prior to this situation, it was not possible. Only European Union and some associated partners as Norway were eligible to be part of these programs with big money, with innovations. But now, from this March on, there is an opening of these programs for Ukraine. It was also part of our advocacy with our arguments on the table.
Yeah.
And with the government,
that's-
when we are sitting in the working group drafting foreign policy strategy of Ukraine, and we know then which paragraphs are drafted literally by us, we understand that there is success when we manage to do it.
Generating information to encourage good outcomes for Ukraine.
Yeah, just to provide the information we have for them to make balanced decisions.
And you want to information in the way that people there can understand.
Yeah, I think
So you
this is
count-
correct, yeah.
So the post challenge would be to line up all the requirements for integration into the EU.
We're trying to do that, and one of our expertise and our advocacy at the moment, there is a special algorithm, a special procedure for accession process. It was changed in 2020, and the changes are not so good because they were envisaged not to have you in, but to put you on distance. It was for Western Balkans, and now we're trying to communicate with our European partners that if you're trying to make it just for everybody, let's maybe just fine-tune this expertise or methodology, because if it is weak, you can use it both way in your arguments. For example, some countries of Western Balkans were blocked by Bulgaria or by Cyprus for their internal domestic policy issues. And the same we could face with Hungary, small country, neighboring country, but still with a lot of Russia influence and their own domestic, I would say, complexities. But they could also make this argument when this is weak, not transparent, for them to stop us. So what we're saying in proposing, let's make it transparent for all of us to tick the box, and then we could see are we developing or not.
So you don't want people spilling wheat on the Polish border all over Europe.
Yeah, this is yet another sensitive issues, which we should take into consideration domestic politics as well in both countries.
Okay, I'm so mindful of time. Still, we went like 1 hour, half an hour, beyond the time because we just started later, right? Yes, so thank you so much, guys, that you found time to drop by,
Thank
to give
you.
a talk because it was not planned in advance. So we're happy to catch you, while you're here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
you for, especially you said coming here, people who are not from UTS. So thank you so much for traveling here. Do we want to make a photo together?
Sure.
Yes, with the
Yeah,
audience. Do you want-
privilege.
Yeah, just for memories. Do you want, maybe we can sit?
But I think you.
No, and maybe everyone will come here and we can
Yes,
do together.
Yeah, because
Can
the
we do
window
that?
there
Yeah.
will be
Yeah.
black to go
Oh,
with
that's
tonight.
fine,
Yes,
it will
yes.
be fine, it will be
Please join
fine.
us.
No, then
Yeah,
I think
I'll
we
just
can-
switch off the.
we can just say that people can continue.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
And
No, I'll switch it off, it should be good, yeah. I think I'll switch this one off and it will be nice.
I'm just
So
saying that
hope
if
some
you-
parts of our stories will have some interest for you.
Yes, sure. You guys, by the way, there's a lunch still there, so you please, stay
Yeah,
and
yeah,
hang out, have coffees and so on. But let's take a photo to remember, right? So we can.
Thank you for your nice.
Дуже приємно. Дуже цікаво. Let's take a photo together, please. Can let's take a photo, and then we can, spread out. We can have a lose people straight away. Everyone will be gone somewhere. Oh, you can
Make sense of information.
Maybe I'll.
Да, зараз ми
А попроси, як
Оксана? Yeah, I want her to be in the photo.
Оля, а ще знімає
Sorry. Yes. I'll cut that. I'll cut that out. Don't worry.